Well, hello everyone, and welcome. You are listening and watching simultaneously, I am sure, Rashkin Report in English and Silicon Curtain. My name is Yuri Rashkin, and I'm joined by Jonathan Fink, and we are here to discuss, well, current events, but with particular eye, in my case, I feel towards Russia, Ukraine, democracy, really all the topics and themes you are used to seeing on both channels, but in different languages. But now we're doing it in English. I love it. Jonathan, how are you doing?
I'm good. I'm just trying to catch up with the tidal wave of news, which seems to be an average Monday these days. But things are moving apace. Things are definitely moving apace, and we've got a ton of stuff to talk about. One of the episodes I put out today was actually on demographics, and they are looking catastrophic. We've looked at Russia's economy. We'll be talking about Russia's military, which is disastrous, but the demographics are simply catastrophic if you fast forward. So lots of stuff to dive into.
Do you think, what's the population of Russia in your estimation? Do you think it's really 140 million that Putin would like us to think? Do you think it's 90 million that some people say? Or I heard a number that all that's needed to operate this pipe of an economy is 40 million.
Well, I mean, the number of people required to operate the economy and the population is completely different. I mean, you could probably get by with a couple of 100,000 to, extract the oil from the ground. Everybody else is superfluous. That is, I think, one of the problems. That's why dictatorships succeed, when the majority of the population and their needs and wants are entirely superfluous to requirements. No, I think this figure of 142 million, if we take that as the official figure, and you fast forward demographics to 2050, that is going to go down considerably, potentially to 132 is the predictions. But if that figure is wrong, that means the future demographics are going to be wrong, and the future population is going to be considerably smaller. I know that Jason Smart of the Kyiv Post did some episodes about this, and there are some fairly, I would say, compelling pieces of evidence, and there are some compelling ideas that Russia's population is actually a lot less than the official figure.
Just without, I think it's important to watch your video because there's more information. But my thought is, who wants to live in Russia? Who wants to make babies in Russia? I mean, let's just get real here. But I mean, real numbers are good too.
Well, that's one of the problems, isn't it? Unfortunately, it's the kind of people who probably don't care too much about how they live are the ones that are going to be making the babies, and the ones that are reasonably intelligent are the ones that are going to be like, yeah, I'm not going to bring a human into this life because that would be excessively cruel.
Interestingly, we're having a similar situation right now in the United States with the results looking accordingly. But nonetheless, let's jump to today's news. We have president who was threatening a surprise, and it seems like we have a surprise. And so let's take a look at this video from, I believe, ABC News, and then we'll discuss. You're watching, news making, breaking right here live.
Very unhappy I am with Russia, but we'll discuss that maybe a different day. But we're very, very unhappy with them, and we're going to be doing very severe tariffs if we don't have a deal in 50 days. Tariffs at about 100%. You'd call them secondary tariffs. You know what that means. But today we're going to talk about something else. And as you know, we've spent $350 billion approximately on this war with Russia and Ukraine, and would like to see it end. It wasn't my war, it was Biden's war. It's not my war, I'm trying to get you out of it. And we want to see it end. And I'm disappointed in President Putin because I thought we would have had a deal 2 months ago, but it doesn't seem to get there. So based on that, we're going to be doing secondary tariffs if we don't have a deal in 50 days. It's very simple. And they'll be at 100%. And that's the way it is. That can be more simple. It's just the way it is. I hope we don't have to do it. But regardless, we are going to be, we make the greatest military equipment in the world, whether it's missiles. You saw that recently in Iran, the way those planes flew in, they had every single 14 bombs hit every target. Then you had the helicopters shoot a total of 30 bombs, 30 missiles, and they hit every single, Marco, is that right? Every single piece, every single target. And it was, I guess, on a scale of 0 to 10, they say it was about a 15. That's how successful it was. That's how lethal it was, a word they like to use nowadays. But it was an amazing, well-organized attack that people in this country wanted to do for 24 years. You know, when we had the pilots in last week, they were saying, sir, we've been practicing this for 24 years, meaning people, not them, but other people that are a little older now. But they too, and you were the one that let us do it. But we've been practicing it 3 to 4 times a year for 22, 24 years, because they always knew they had to stop Iran from doing what they were doing, which is trying to come up with a nuclear weapon, a nuclear bomb. And we did it very successfully. And we make the best equipment, the best missiles, the best of everything. The European nations know that. And we've made a deal today, and I'm going to have Mark speak about it, but we've made a deal today where we are going to be sending them weapons and they're going to be paying for them. The United States will not be having any payment made. We're not buying it, but we will manufacture it and they're going to be paying for it. Our last meeting of a month ago was very successful in that they agreed to 5%, which is more than $1 trillion a year, so they have a lot of money. And these are wealthy nations. They have a lot of money, and they want to do it. They feel very strongly about it, and we feel strongly about it, too. But we're in for a lot of money, and we don't want to do it anymore, and we can't. But we make the best, and we're going to be sending the best to NATO, and in some cases to maybe, at Mark's suggestion, if we go to Germany, where they're going to send early on missiles, and they'll be replaced, and NATO is going to take care of it. It's going to be coordinated by NATO, and they're going to work very much with Matt Whitaker, who's right here, who's a great ambassador, and Matt's going to be coordinating. You better do a good job, Matt.
I will.
But Matt's going to coordinate. He's a very talented guy. He's going to coordinate everything. So in a nutshell, we're going to make top-of-the-line weapons, and they'll be sent to NATO. NATO may choose to have certain of them sent to other countries where we can get a little additional speed, where the country will release something and it'll be mostly in the form of a replacement. And I'd like to have Mark, and again, just a highly respected, pretty young guy for having had the career that he's had, because he had an amazing career before going to NATO. So and we spent a lot of time together over the last couple of months.
All right. That's the exclusive rambling, meandering thoughts, visions of our president. And, you know.
So I didn't do a word count there, but I'm guessing there are a couple of hundred words at least. You could probably boil it down to about 5. Vladimir, or 3. Vladimir, you're screwed.
I like your approach, but I don't see it that way.
Yeah.
And, you know, and would you like to explain? I suppose I would love to hear why Vladimir is screwed by this.
Yeah, I don't know if he is. And this idea of, you know, giving them another 50 days. Well, look, we've had, you know, we'll get back to you in 2 weeks. We'll get back to you in 2 weeks. We'll get back to you in 2 weeks. And it's endlessly deferred. Well, this period of 50 days, well, what's to stop that 50 days turning into 100 days, turning into 150, turning into 200 days? But on the upside, he's hinting here that he's quite happy to sell weapons to Ukraine's partners and not put restrictions on the end user, the end market. I think this is the significant change here from what I can tell, because he's been refusing to even sell defensive munitions to Ukraine for hard cash. They were asking for Patriots, and you know, recently the transition of Patriots was blocked. Not the new ones they offered to buy, but the ones that were already mandated by the Biden administration. So the idea that US factories are going to ramp up based on substantial European orders to defend Europe and potentially to pass some of that kit on to Ukraine. That seems to be a huge change. And there's no timescale put on that, i.e. no restriction, not like, if you don't do this, that, and the other, Vladimir, then we will send these weapons. No, the intimation here is that ramping up of weapons sales begins immediately, and that the sanctions is the thing that may or may not happen. This seems like a significant change of tone.
I would say that I guess I would look at it as slightly the opposite direction, because to begin with, I feel this is a Ukrainian victory as well as a victory of everyone who put pressure on this administration, because without our pressure, without pressure of everybody who supports Ukraine and democracy and all the good things in this world, Trump would probably just say, whatever, and this is also the fact that Ukraine is not surrendering. And
yes.
he can't walk away from it and say, see, they've reached peace, because he doesn't care how peace is reached. But at this point, he has to deal with it because Ukraine is still there. And that's plus. On the other hand, and I agree that giving weapons is fantastic, although the question is, we were so concerned about level of aid being insufficient with prior administration. And this administration, it seems to be in no hurry to get rid of, let's say, $3.8 billion that they have left over that they don't have to pay anything for, that's just there from the previous administration as well. And we only heard so far about $300 million. So there is general reluctance still, but the mechanism has been established and things are moving in the right direction. But Putin got pretty much all the timeline that he wanted to what he said 10 days ago to Trump in the conversation on the 3rd, that he's planning a summer offensive for the next 60 days. Well, wouldn't you know it, Donald Trump comes out 10 days later and says, I'm giving you 50 days.
50 days, yes.
I mean, this is arithmetic,
The arithmetic's a certain giveaway there. And I think there may be some different information behind the scenes. It may be, and this is purely speculation, it may be that somebody like Kellogg or somebody else has managed to get through to Trump and said, well, do you know what? From your phone call and from what we've said to Putin, he's not going to stop. And actually, he's minded to scale things up. And all the indicators are that he's scaling up. Trump seems to have acknowledged that. So I think that is information which is almost certainly in Trump's brain. He may also have got information because, he's, I don't want to insult him, but, even he would say, okay, well, what does this mean? Are they going to take the whole country? Are they not? What's going to happen here? It may be that someone's got to him and said, well, you know what? This operation that Putin's mounting is not going to succeed. It cannot succeed. And we're going to be here in 60 days, and there's going to be a lot of dead people, mostly Russians, and none of these strategic objectives will be met. That's the bit that we don't know whether someone's whispered in his ear or not. But certainly he seems to have understood that Putin has maximalist objectives and that he's not going to cease. That in itself, I mean, okay, it's a very small thing, but that in itself is a change from a few months ago, where I think he was, fixated on this illusory peace, and he was buying, Russian propaganda at that time that they were feeding to him that somehow they were serious about peace as well, and it was the Ukrainians who weren't. That all that stuff seems to have gone. I mean, there's no talk here about peace negotiations anymore. We are into a full-on war phase with no pretense.
That's true. Russia and Ukraine are both excused from pretending to negotiate for the next 50 days? Or is there pressure now to have negotiations?
I think he finally realizes there is no negotiation, and that process is dead in the water, and that Putin is disingenuous. So he hasn't really alluded to peace negotiation for a while now.
If he didn't, there's a totally different way to look at this, really, just because the words of Trump are so, you can give it different meanings, but they could potentially be negotiating for the next 50 days to try to arrive at some kind of a conclusion at the end so that Trump could sign it and be victorious, right?
Well, yeah. I mean, this could all be he might also be thinking, well, you know what? Russia's going to be exhausted by this time. Putin either gives up now, and we're going to have to, expend a lot of energy to make that happen and give Ukraine a lot of arms, or Russia's going to exhaust itself. And in 60-day times, it'll be obvious to everybody and to Putin that he's done. And then we can take credit for whatever happens next, which is his, maybe they have the idea that Putin at that point will go, do you know what? We've got as far as we're going to go, and let's call it a day, right? Let's go in and have some tea and exit the pitch. If they're thinking that of course is not what's going to happen, because it seems to me that Putin only has one objective, which is imperialism. He only has one tone, which is aggression, and he has one gear, which is escalate. Now, given all of that, he's going to carry on. He's going to carry on until Russia breaks apart. The Russian economy literally has no capability whatsoever. At that point, we may well be into Prosthesis. We may well be into the sort of autumn and mud season, which means that Putin could then pretend that the war is still viable for until the spring or early summer, where things thaw out again. And they may be able to hold the line, because again, without substantial, U.S. weapons supplies, it's dubious. And I'm not just making this up. This is what Valery Zaluzhny has just recently written. It's really neither side has the resources or the machinery, especially in this era of drone warfare where there's absolute transparency of the battlefield. Neither side has the means for substantial breakthrough or indeed the strength at this point in the war. So I see that maybe happening. We get to autumn, Putin's failed in his objectives. It's catastrophic. Girkin writes another couple of letters from prison decrying everybody, blah, blah, blah. On it goes. And then we're into autumn and they sort of hunker down for whatever that is, continuing to sort of lob explosives into Ukraine.
It seems pretty clear to me that Putin is planning on having a big celebration in September, or early fall, and he is really counting on the next 60 days to be crucial for him. Because when we talk about 50 days that Trump is giving him, it's clear to Trump that Putin is not interested until he's done doing what he wants to do, and he's giving himself 60 days for perhaps the reasons that you're mentioning. Weather in the fall is nothing to mess with. But at the same time, we see that Russia is already collapsed long ago, because Lavrov is again in North Korea and talking about receiving military and possibly more future dead bodies and the weapons from North Korea. What is Budanov said, that 40% is North Korean made now that they find. The numbers are really, this is North Korea fighting against a European country and the NATO allies?
It basically is. It's a North Korean / Russian war now. And, the latest, which, we hinted at, I think, in last week's conversation, and I've done an episode on it since, is that it's, I think it's relatively reliably rumored. So we had 14,000 odd North Korean troops, which helped in the retaking of Kursk. I don't think Russia could have done that to the same extent without that input. They're now talking about 20,000.
I blame more the collapse of the intelligence when we stopped providing intelligence resources to Ukraine there. But
it's a combination of the two. Yeah, absolutely. No, intelligence was critical as well. A few errors, and obviously Russia managed to muster a lot of ethnic Russian troops as well, or from around the empire, as it were. But I think without that North Korean input, they would have been hard pushed perhaps. So it is now rumored that up to 30,000 new troops are being sent, but maybe not into the territory of Ukraine. The conversation here is that those 30,000 will replace Russia's border forces. right across the territory of the Russian Federation, liberating all of those people to be able to come to the front and be drafted in. We'll come to the sheer insanity of that in a minute. Plus, you've got 20,000 engineers or munitions workers who are going to come and help scale up Russia's factories. So I think by the end of this offensive, which is going to fail, and it's going to, we've seen the casualty rate day in, day out, month in, month out, rising significantly over the last 3 years, and it's only going in one direction. In fact, that is accelerating.
We know Trump keeps reminding Putin of that, but Putin just doesn't care.
He doesn't care, but that is gonna accelerate even further with this summer offensive, simply because it's, you know, I don't think they have the capability and the armor to break through, and the drone defenses plus the absolutely substantial fortifications that Ukraine has been building around the sort of 20-30 kilometers behind the zero line, that is going to be an absolute slaughterhouse of Russians, even if they get that far. It's going to be very difficult because these things are built, you know, quite unlike previous fortifications. These have actually been built into the landscape. They've been built with the idea of defending, you know, high ground, defending territory, and creating areas where you can kind of kettle and attrit Russian forces. So it's utterly delusional. But we also hear from sources, including Maxim Kalashnikov and Girkin and a few others, that Putin's objectives for this summer campaign aren't simply to take the remaining sort of 2% or whatever it is of Luhansk, and possibly some Sumy, Kharkiv, Zaporizhzhia, and so on. No, he is hoping to punch through to Odessa. It's given what we've seen over the last 3 years, and despite, you know, we know that there is an infantry problem on the Ukrainian side, but these plans that Putin has are beyond delusional, which means this offensive is going to be a catastrophic failure for Russia, which also means that the only way Putin can show that he has any, in his framework, control of the situation will be to dramatically increase the number of Shaheeds and drones that he lobs into Ukrainian cities. That I can't see it going any other way than that.
I agree with you, because no matter what, you know, my feedback that I get from my viewers and my listeners is that these bombings don't change people's mind. Nobody's planning on surrendering. This is not going to lead to capitulation, and therefore, with the, you know, with different whatever they have, it will be stopped. Especially when we see how ineffective Russian army is. But it's interesting to me as I kind of go back to the Trump, the quote and his thought pattern. Ukrainians, and for 3 years I've been in Ukrainian info space explaining that Trump means nothing good for Ukraine, and people were saying, well, no, he probably does. Now they don't trust him at all. And I'm going, well, but I mean, it looks like he is sending weapons, and Ukrainians are going, we don't trust him. We don't believe him anymore. That lying Trump. You know, well, you know, you earn your reputation.
And I think the reputation is absolutely justified. Kellogg is perhaps a curious character who stands out to the administration. He said some really tone deaf and absolutely appalling things, but he's also said some things that show he at least understands something of what's going on.
You know, that matches, because he used to be national security advisor for Mike Pence, who is known for similar qualities.
Yes, but at the end of the day, is he a character who is going to say resign over a point of principle? Is he going to carry through an argument based on moral grounds or conviction in the face of bullies, or, you know, characters like Trump who can literally sort of shout you down? No, he's not. He will make his case, whether it's listened to or not, and then he'll subside into the shadows, and he'll do what he's been doing. He'll appear on the news, he'll say various things in the same kind of measured tones. Will he make any kind of difference? No, I think he's almost like the invisible man in the administration, especially if he's saying things they don't want to hear. He just, you know, sorry, did someone say something? So again, but I think there's a lot of analysts and people who hang on his words as if they are representing the actual policy of I call it the administration, but you have to say, the policy of Trump himself. And then last week, the Eldridge Colby and Hegseth thing. Now, I don't remember whether we talked about this or not, but I have discussed it with quite a few people, and they said the idea that Colby just went off and did this on his own. I mean, he is known to be a difficult character, let's say, and something of an outsider, and with very distinct ideas. But the idea that he went off and did that in Trump's administration without any kind of, by your leave, seems fairly implausible. So again, I don't know what your thoughts are. I mean, you're much closer to US politics, but it seems to me that this is almost certainly Trump saying, "Hey, let's give it a go, and if people don't like it, then we'll just pin it on you, and I'll pretend I had nothing to do with it."
I think about a mafia. Donald said would somebody please relieve me of this person? It would be so nice if that just was not oh, well, okay, moving on.
Yeah.
And because otherwise it looks like maybe the real president of the United States is Eldridge Colby.
Yeah.
Like maybe it's like Colby 2028, because he's the one who decides what we do with our foreign policy, where we send troops, where we take troops out of. And yeah, on my channel, I discussed as well this interesting persona, because he has attacked verbally different allies of the United States, where he broke negotiations with Japan when they agreed to a 3.5% number, and he then insisted that it needs to be 5%. I'm trying to think of what other instance there was of him inserting himself into I believe when the carrier was sent by like France or something to Pacific Ocean, and Colby inquired if it could be reversed and sent back, and just very aggressively pushing this America first, and you all are not needed here, please, without please go away attitude. I do feel like this is actually, there's a bigger problem here, which kind of goes back to the HR situation in the White House with Serhiy Gore.
I was going to ask you about Gore, because
because
wow.
The fact that it's so funny. But let's just say, stay on point with him, is that this administration looks for people with the right qualities on a variety of levels to put them in the right positions, and some of these have already shown themselves to be such people during the first administration. Colby was there before. So I think the problem is on some level so much bigger than Trump, and these people, it's like Trump's deep state. When they feel like they know what president wants, even if he's going to be not quite saying it, or maybe he is saying it now today, they know what he really means. And it's this kind of a quiet following is interesting and kind of scary. But with Gore, it's been amusing to see a response of my audience, many of whom are from Tashkent, as is he apparently, which is not Russia at all, but still was part of USSR. Part of
he doesn't look too Uzbek to me. I mean, this may just be my incipient racism there, but he doesn't seem to have the classic Uzbek features, dare I say it.
You are correct. In a racial profiling poster, he would not pass for an Uzbek. You're absolutely right. I believe that he's got a Jewish background, but I think that and his mother is supposedly, according to Times of Malta, is citizen of Israel. So he's got, plenty of international connections to speak any language and look any part, but he has, 38 years, and he's got such history of working for such strange characters in Republican Party who all have some kind of connection to Russia, that it's just like, it seems like there's a molding of interest that's been happening also far before yesterday. It's been a while.
But he and his parents seem to have generated businesses that were rather lucrative without necessarily having the background one would have thought to be sort of, instant hits in business. Now, of course, I've been in business, and you get some weird stuff, and you get odd characters, and many people who are exceedingly rich are actually rather odd characters. But, there is a profile of sleeper cells as well, whereby you'll be nudged along your way. You'll be given some kind of assistance and connections to help set yourself up financially. That will then both provide cover, but also it means the state doesn't have to necessarily create the risk of having to sort of pay you a lot to keep those operations going. I mean, there's, he might have nothing to do with that, but equally, it seems to smell very much like a kind of long-term sleeper cell kind of setup. But then people are going to be telling me that I'm exceedingly paranoid, and what am I talking about?
Well, I think that it's more about the fact that his security clearance was not completed, or was not completed until they were caught on for it. I think that part of Serhiy Gore's problem on a specific procedural level. But Malta itself is known from, some of the coverage that I've done on my channel is kind of like the pirate island of spying, so it's a Tartuga, Captain Blood, pirate stories, and so this man comes from there. Wow, how perfect, Yeah.
Cyprus would be the other one as well. I mean, I've got a wonderful relative who lives in Cyprus. I'm not going to give any names because but Cyprus is an incredibly Russia-friendly environment, as you probably are aware, to the point where they don't just sort of welcome Russian business. They don't just welcome those sort of, substantial bank accounts without asking any sort of, intrusive questions about the source of the wealth. A lot of Cypriots are, through dint of that kind of influence, plus orthodoxy, are exceedingly pro-Russian. He drives around with 2 Ukrainian flags strapped to his car, and he wears a blue and yellow jersey walking down the street. He's 80. I'm surprised he hasn't been thumped or something, or struck with a bottle from behind. But he's attested that if these guys are coming,
he's got official permission from somebody to do that.
Yes, that's right. Yes, don't approach. He looks slightly mad. Yeah.
Right. Let me ask you this. We have a scandal breaking out here that's been simmering, sizzling, and it's kind of out of left field in a sense, because as sensible people discuss things like Ukraine and what's going on policy-wise in different countries, the MAGA base of the United States seems to be built on a couple of foundational conspiracies, such as the Epstein conspiracy of what could be in the files of this man who was very wealthy, supposedly became wealthy in part by helping shelter money from people who, like, husband is going through a divorce, needs to hide $100 million, and then Epstein, using those kind of Panama Papers connections and different things, helped hide the money, and therefore became quite prosperous. And well, for the last 15 years of, for a 15-year period of time, he was like best friends with Trump, which somehow was like missed, I don't know how, by this MAGA conspiracy, because they kept thinking that they're going to catch Clintons in there and all the Democrats in there. And when it turned out that these people, Trump supporters, came to power, and for whatever reason did not release the Epstein papers, that it seems like the world is blowing up, not in a way that we expected, but yet in a very powerful way for Trump. And it seems like this is when all of his helping Ukraine now almost seems like a last thing that a failing politician does is foreign policy. Like something's wrong here. How does that look to you?
I think it's exceedingly fishy, of course, and having followed this stuff for some considerable time and throughout the first term in office, none of this comes as any surprise whatsoever. Maxwell, the daughter of Robert Maxwell, I mean, again, seemingly exceedingly toxic character who is currently serving. It wouldn't be at Her Majesty's pleasure, we say here, but at the pleasure of whatever you say in the States. She's banged up for trafficking, slavery, whatever those charges are. Horrific. And of course, there's those pictures of her and Trump and Epstein together. And these details are fairly common knowledge. I mean, this is not a conspiracy theory. It's factually correct that their connections are deep and go back a considerably long period of time. it's no surprise that he's come out and said, oh, I never really liked that Epstein guy, which is extraordinary, implausible, and ludicrous. But unfortunately, if you're in a cult, this is the kind of stuff that you can put to the back of your mind, unless, of course, the denials become so cack-handed. The various stories that are put out start to conflict dramatically with each other. That's what I think is happening. You know, even people who are deep in the cult are looking at this and go, that, hang on a second, this doesn't make any sense. These guys are clearly lying about something. Whether they will pin that to their godhead figure is a different thing. Because in a cult, you know, I think you'll look around to blame the minions before you blame the guy at the top. So we might see some heads rolling. I mean, with the first one will be, you know, ditching Pam Bondi. I think they're starting to get a little bit disillusioned with Kash Patel. And again, his denials seem ludicrous. He spent years building up his profile.
I thought Kash Patel was willing to support whatever president told him to.
Well, also, he spent years talking about this conspiracy, and it's what helped build his profile up in the MAGA community. He actually, you know, part of his identity is on releasing this information and on the very idea that it's explosive and will shake the foundations of politics to their very core. He turns around and says, yeah, no, there's no list. Yeah, there's no list at all. No, we got nothing to tell you. What can I say? It doesn't wash with anybody. Will he root around to find other scapegoats? Will he try to deflect it by starting a few wars or something? I mean, this is the other thing on the MAGA base, is no more wars. I think this is the other pillar, which we saw with Iran. Not everybody is really on board with this.
I have to admit, we have passionate sometimes viewers that are, you know, say things like, I had a troll that I banned a few times on my channel who finally, I said, you know, he said something that was really worth paying attention to, and he split up from Trump because he picked between Trump and Musk. He picked Musk. But now we're seeing further crumbling in the base, and this is like right here in our chat. We see Neo71. The buck stops with Donald, not scam Bondi. So, you know, she sacrificing a beautiful blonde is not going to save this this situation.
I mean, should I say the track record isn't good? The buck has never stopped with Donald J. Trump. He has never been held to account for his innumerable crimes and frauds and failed businesses and destroying people's lives and ripping them off. He has never been held to account. I'm not going to hold my breath. He is also, you know, to extend it to one of the comments there, who's, you know, alluding to the clickbaity headline I gave. No, Vladimir isn't necessarily screwed here, as you say, because Trump has not promised anything dramatic that's going to instantly take Putin down. But I think there's a significant change in tone. But whether Trump will be in the dock for anything he's done, no, I think he will. Unfortunately, I think he will sail through this life. He'll chow down on his last hamburger. His hand will clutch to his chest, and that'll be it. And there will be no justice for anybody.
Well, history will take its revenge on Donald Trump. Let me ask you, what do you think about this? Perhaps conspiracy theory, perhaps not. Again, your choice. What about, since we can safely presume that Epstein had connections with Kremlin, and this is that Kremlin probably has as complete a file on Donald from Epstein as anybody, as any place. What if this is a pressure campaign on Donald Trump to quit on Ukraine, to follow through some whatever obligations and continue with his policies and not stand in the way of Vladimir Putin? And because it's interesting to see Tucker Carlson's position here, who has said that essentially Pam Bondi is made a whole bunch out of nothing. She is terrible, but there's nothing to see here in the end. So this is kind of like an interesting splitting the hairs, but basically bringing more chaos.
Yes, I think this is going to run for a bit longer. I can see him sort of pretending it's going away, but if they carry on with some of the sort of excuses, then he may have to get some sacrificial lambs in there. He may have to throw people under the bus. The question is, does that make it worse? Once people are outside the tent, once the sort of status and privilege of being, at the center of MAGA world, sounds like a really crap theme park, doesn't it? Once the privilege of being ejected from the MAGA paradise in the administration, a lot of people have turned around and sort of spilled the beans. And of course, they're instantly sort of decried and rejected. We can think of, there's just so many. Almost anyone who seems to have left the first Trump administration has written a book about how monumentally, catastrophically awful it was. But of course, no one in MAGA world are gonna read that stuff. No one from that cult are going to watch Scaramucci, for instance, who is highly entertaining and quite incisive about what makes that all tick. Whether some of these characters do the same, I don't know. I don't see the evidence of it sticking. I mean, he's the Teflon Don. Nothing seems to stick to the old Donald.
Well, I have my hopes, doubts, whatever you want to call them, but it seems like this situation with this particular scandal may have more legs than Donald would prefer. And I think that he's just he found himself in an interesting situation. I feel that his crowd, his MAGA crowd, are so bloodthirsty that they will eat him alive if they need to satisfy their bloodthirst, because it's just, at the same time, this is also ruining reputation of J.D. Vance, because he also, like all of them, swore oath, I think, on this Epstein file, and if it's not being released and they're not facilitating it, then they're all like damned by their own, petard. And it's so it's interesting to see the fallout of it, and I guess that's why it's important to follow exciting channels on YouTube where you will hear all the details.
Well, this is it. I mean, and that's this is just one of the good things, at least, is that covering these stories are both important, but also it gives you to something to talk about, because it's painful covering every day, what's happening in Ukraine. And I rack my brains to try and see how we can get what's happening in Ukraine, into people's heads, because I met some people at the weekend who they glance at the headlines. The headlines don't mention Ukraine that much, and a few people I spoke to who are pro-Ukraine but not really fully engaged in what's going on. They were quite surprised to learn that the attacks on Kiev and other cities were dramatically ramping up. And they see what's happening in Israel, and rightly, because that is dramatic, and they've got Iron Dome, and that certainly gets into the headlines. And it doesn't matter whether it's Tel Aviv or Kiev, being under that intensive bombardment is horrific, and no civilian should have to go through that, let alone any child or animal. But I was saying to her, look, that attack on Tel Aviv, which is burned into your memory, that is happening every single night in Ukraine, every single night, day in and day out. And they don't have Iron Dome. They have some systems, bodged together, and they're incredibly good at what they do, but they do not have that same sort of protective systems. But it's happening every single day. And she's like, well, why am I not reading about this? It's because, unfortunately, the news media, once you've reported on something once or twice, editors are like, yeah, no, we've done that. It doesn't matter that it's happening. Doesn't matter that it is probably the most momentous war at scale and strategically important war since the Second World War. That's not how the news works anymore. It's like, yeah, we did that. Yeah, we're moving on now. And it's deeply shocking. And this person, highly intelligent, I was talking to, actually, she had no idea of the scale of the war. Yes, I know it's going on, but is it still going on like it was a year ago, 2 years ago? And I just said, look, it's a 1,000-kilometer front. You've got armies of around 1 million in the field fighting. This is easily comparable to, say, one of the front lines or one of the theaters in the Second World War, or one of the fronts in the Second War, such as the Eastern Front. It's comparable. It's absolutely comparable in scale. That blew her mind. the idea that the news media are not reflecting, I think, the scale and gravity of the situation. And that is one of the reasons, perhaps, why politicians do not feel under such pressure to take it nearly seriously enough and provide what is required to drive Russia from the territory of Ukraine.
I will admit that I think that it's difficult to watch war news day in and day out, and I feel like our numbers show that viewership is down in the summer unless Donald Trump says some crazy thing like, oh, surprise on Monday. But overall, people just get tired. They want to tune out. They want to listen to and enjoy something more peaceful. But at the same time, this is the best time for Putin's war machine to attempt to once again try to accomplish its evil goals of conquering Ukraine. And this is where I'm glad, I don't know if that's the right word, seeing that there's not glad that this is good that New York Post, thank you to New York Post for making this their front page, because we see that there is a drone attack on a 1-year-old.
Yes,
That is horrific, and it stands out because I think that it's amazing that even in this situation, there's still things that are newsworthy simply because they're so horrendous, and they break through. And we know that Donald Trump, one of the very few media sources that he consumes is New York Post. So I'm grateful to New York Post for putting this on their front page.
Yes.
But I guess to summarize, our conversation today, I feel just real sadness for the sense of loss of American leadership, because it feels like what we're doing in this situation is we're acknowledging the fact that apparently America can do nothing to restrain Russia. The best thing that we can do is be a supplier for Ukraine and for European countries, where we will provide things for them that they need to have. We're the only ones who can make it. We can make some money here. This is a win-win. That's not leadership.
No, it's entirely transactional. But unfortunately, that's literally the best we can hope at this point. I mean, I know your disappointment and why you're disappointed, but at this point, we're not going to get anything more until this administration is gone.
So I think with that in mind, it's important to keep paying attention, to keep understanding what is happening, because there's not only several conflicts in this world, but I believe, and Jonathan, tell me if you disagree, but if the threat in Kremlin was neutralized, or when it is neutralized, there will be peace breaking out all over the world.
Yes. So, no, this is absolutely true. I mean, this is something I want to explore in another episode. I mean, I don't know if you know any academics who explore this. Excuse me, but we were talking about the Middle East, as well as, and it's not a subject I touch on, that much on the channel, because it's something of a can of worms, let's say. But what I want to understand a lot more is the relationship between Russia and the PLO and Hamas, and the role that the KGB played in leveraging anti-Semitism. In the 50s, 60s, 70s, they wanted to cause chaos around the world. They saw it as a zero-sum game. Anything that weakens their adversaries, the US, the Western world, is good. Anything that weakens democratic values is good. And I think they saw the struggle in the Middle East as an ideal vehicle to generate chaos, to try and weaken the West. And I think that's continued up to the present day. So yes, if they were to cease to have the means, and it would be even better if they had no intent to cause chaos, but certainly if they're deprived of the means to do that, you will, I think, dramatically see peace breaking out in a whole number of situations. But as we saw in the 90s, which unfortunately we both remember, that was a period where Russia also ceased to have the means to project its power around the globe.
And that's what we talked about, the end of history.
Yeah. But the desire to do that didn't go away. And indeed, those intelligence services didn't go away. The methodologies they deployed didn't go away. and that malign intent was still bubbling up, waiting for the moment where it would have the resources to resume activities, get the show back on the road, get the band back together. This time round, I think we need to be a little more canny and figure out how not only can we deprive Russia of resources, but deprive it of the intent to be an agent of malicious chaos around the world.
I think one of the things that is becoming very obvious, and thank goodness for that as well, is that we're starting to realize and admit that there was a big mistake that was made in around 1991 when Soviet Union collapsed, and we decided that everything is great now and the problem's been fixed and we can walk away now and everything's going to be wonderful if we just cover Russia with lots and lots of money. It turned out that with lots and lots of money, Russia is going to be more Russia. And how that is helping anybody. So hopefully, yes, when Russia, as retired General Ben Hodges has pointed out a couple of years ago now, Russia is going to collapse, Russia is going to fall apart. What are we going to do then? Because are we going to have a plan, or are we going to be doing another Chicken Kiev? What are we going to be doing here? So
are you and I going to be still doing these shows saying, don't give the Kremlin... Don't give the gremlins water.
Not again.
Don't give the gremlins water, because we know what happens.
We do. Well, Jonathan, thank you so much to you for your time. And remember, everyone, to subscribe to Silicon Curtain if you haven't done it, and to Rashkin Report in English, or just Rashkin Report, especially if you speak Russian. Thank you. Slava Ukraini. And until we meet again, take care, everyone.
Herojam Slava, до встречи. Thank you.